video, I'm going to be looking at the IELTS breakdown and the scoring of the examination. So, the test is divided into 4 parts: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Let me get started with the speaking. So, the speaking is an 11 to 14 minute face-to-face examination with one examiner. The exam is recorded, so the examiner doesn't grade you at the moment that the exam is taking place, but it's done afterwards. And by doing that, you are also allowed to ask for a remark if it is necessary. The exam is divided into 3 parts: an introduction, which are questions that the examiner asks you on familiar topics like work, study, and family. The second part is a cue card, and that is a set of prompts on a specific topic which you have to talk about. You are given a specific set of time to think about it and write some notes, and then the examiner gives you 1 to 2 minutes to talk about it. The third part is a discussion, and usually the discussion is an extension of the topic that you spoke about in part 2. You are assessed on 4 different criteria, and it is based on a very specific speaking band descriptor. You are given a score from 0 to 9, band 0 to 9, on pronunciation, fluency and coherence, grammatical range and accuracy, and lexical resource. And the test is the same for the academic test and the general test. Moving on to writing. For the writing, you have 60 minutes to produce 2 writing tasks. The test is different for academic and general in that task 1, for the academic test, you have to write a 150-word information transfer based on a graph or a line chart or a pie chart, a line bar graph. You will become more familiar with the different diagrams and graphs as you practice. And for the general test, task 1 is a 150-word letter. The test for the task 2 is exactly the same for the academic and the general test, and it is a formal essay. So how are you assessed? You are assessed against 2 specific writing band descriptors, and the criteria are 4. For task 1, it's task achievement, and for task 2, task response. That's the first criteria. Now remember that it will be slightly different because there are 2 different tasks for the general and academic test for task 1. But for task 2 and the rest of the criteria, it's the same: coherence and cohesion, lexical resource, grammar range, and accuracy. There is a descriptor for task 1 and a different one for task 2. The scoring is done by an examiner, and it is very important that you consider that task 2 is more important than task 1. It is weighted at 66% when task 1 is weighted at 33%. Now, when you do the academic test, you are automatically drawn to want to spend more time on task 1 because it is quite complex. It is a report, there is data that you need to transfer, and it is a task that we're not really accustomed to doing, right? So it is an automatic thing that we tend to want to do, but we need to remember that task 2 is more important. How it is scored: the band that you get for task 1 is then added to 2 task 2 bands and then divided by 3, giving you the overall writing score. Moving on to the listening part. For the listening, you have 30 minutes to answer 40 questions, and then you are given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to a specific answer sheet. The test is divided into 4 parts. You're going to hear a conversation with 2 people, a speech or a talk by 1 person on a social context. You're going to hear a conversation with up to 4 people on an educational or training context, and then a talk or a lecture by 1 person on an academic context. The test is exactly the same for the academic and general test, and the score is calculated based on the number of correct answers that you give and placed on a band scale. Here's an example. If you get 23 to 25 correct answers out of 40, it's a band 6. If you get 26 to 29 correct answers out of 40, it's a band 6.5. Very, very important, the listening is only played once. And I'm going to go into more detail about each of the parts of the examination in my next videos. But I think it's worth noting now that the listening is a very particular test. And that is, the reason why I say this is because you are put in a position to do a number of things simultaneously. Let me elaborate. You're going to be listening, writing, either on paper or typing if you're doing the computer-based test, reading, formulating an answer or looking for an answer, all at the same time. That is quite a lot to do, all at the same time and within 30 minutes. So one needs to really consider this and remember that it is a tall order. Okay, more about that in my next videos. The last part of the test is the reading. So for the reading, you've got 60 minutes to answer 40 questions, but you have no extra time to transfer your answers. Unlike the listening, that gives you an extra 10 minutes to transfer answers, the reading does not. You have to factor it in to the 60 minutes. So the test is different for academic and general, and I'm going to explain it now. For the academic test, you will be going through 3 texts, and they are of an academic nature of general interest. The texts are all authentic, and they come from books, journals, magazines, and newspapers, and are of a descriptive, factual, discursive, or analytical nature. For the general test, you'll be looking at 4 shorter texts that get progressively more challenging. They are also authentic, but are of a general nature and focus more on social survival. For example, the text will come from adverts, notices, job descriptions, contracts, application forms, etc. And the scoring for the reading is exactly the same as the listening. However, the scale is slightly different. For the general test, if you get 27 out of 29 correct answers, the band is 5.5. But in the academic test, if you get 27 out of 29 correct answers, your band will be band 6. Seems a little bit odd, I know. But there is a very simple reason for that. And that is, it takes a little more effort to get 27 to 29 for the academic test. And so the students, candidates, are awarded a little bit more in the academic test. And that is it for the IELTS breakdown and scoring.